The Pittsburgh Penguins are still looking for consistency. Sometimes they look great. Sometimes you wonder where they're coming from. Hunter Hodies of Locked On Penguins has the latest on the Pens and what we can expect at the trade deadline and beyond. Coming up next on the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. And Hunter, I can't figure out your team. Maybe you can help me out here. 1 minute they look like they could beat anybody, and the next minute they look like they would lose to their AHL farm team. Please explain what's going on in Pittsburgh right now.
Isn't it funny? They kind of have the Steelers syndrome in a way where they can show up to play some of the really good teams, and then against the mid to bad teams, they kind of struggle. And you saw that this week. They dominate a pretty good Winnipeg Jets team at home, and they stick to the blueprint, which has, gotten them to shut out Vegas at home this year. They've shut out the Colorado Avalanche at home this year. They've beaten, your Islanders twice, one on the road and one at home. They've also been able to beat the Hurricanes at home. They crushed the Flyers on the road. And it's when they're playing boring hockey or just keeping teams to the outside while also getting at least a little bit of offense that I think they're at their best. And then you go to Minnesota, a team that's below them in the standings. And yeah, it's Marc-Andre Fleury night, but then they kind of just struggle through 40 minutes. They're able to tie the game in the third, and then they give up a backbreaking goal a little over halfway through the third period, and you're not able to get any points. And then you lose on Sunday. You go 0 for 4 in terms of getting points on a back-to-back. And now at this point, you're setting 7 points back of the Flyers at this point and about 8 or 9 points back of the final wild card spot. They've had games in hand these last couple of weeks, but I've been saying on my show, those only matter if you win them. And you start off the unofficial second half really strong with the win against Winnipeg, and then you blow these two games, which are games in hand, and now it's going to start getting a lot harder because those games in hand are about to go away. And yeah, I mean, they've really been struggling to find that consistency all year. They haven't had that 5 to 6 to 7 to 10 game winning streak that I feel like they've really needed to fully get back into the race. I mean, they've been in the race, but they haven't, been a point or two out of the final wild card spot or a point or two behind the Flyers. They've been kind of hovering around 4 to 5 to 6 points back, and now it's even further back because they just haven't been able to string consistent efforts. They've, they'll rotate win, loss, win, win, loss, but that's just not good enough, right? They had that stretch of play after December into January where they went 9-3-2 in about 14 games. And after that, they just went back to being inconsistent. And it's just been a chore to watch at times outside of, what Sidney Crosby's doing. Tristan Jarry has been fantastic. Jake Guentzel has been awesome. Even in a down year, I think Evgeny Malkin is still playing really well. He's just not getting help on his line mates. And then, they have a few defensemen who aren't up to par. The depth is not all the way there. It's just been a real struggle for this team, I feel like, outside of a few players this season.
If I would have told most hockey fans before the season started that we'd be in mid-February and the Penguins would be 25th in the league in goals scored and 30th in the league on the power play, most of them would not have believed that. What's going on? I mean, you talked about the Stars. Where's the scoring depth right now?
I mean, the scoring depth has been non-existent this year. And it's funny, Gil, the Penguins were 22nd in goals just a couple of days ago. Now you said it's dropped to 25th. That just goes to show that they're not getting any scoring outside of a few players. Sidney Crosby has been awesome this year. I think it's been a Hart Trophy caliber year from Sid at 36 years old. Jake Guentzel has been playing phenomenal. Evgeny Malkin, he's had some bad games, but I think he's also played at a decent level. But after that, Brian Rust has struggled. Raquel has been a ghost. Riley Smith has been a terrible fit after I really liked the trade at the time. And then on the third and fourth lines, there's just no scoring there at all. Lars Eller can contribute sometimes. Drew O'Connor has been contributing throughout the year, but that's really it. Noah Chari, who was signed as a defense first forward, he's not chipping in offensively. He's also hurt right now. Matt Nieto signing has been a dud. He's also been banged up. But even when he was in the lineup, he wasn't doing anything. Jansen Harkins on the fourth line has 4 points in 34 games. Jeff Carter, who I think has been a bit better this year compared to last year, he's still that it's not, the depth is not cutting it. And I said this on July 1 when Kyle Dubas made all these moves. I gave him a C because I didn't really see where the goal scoring was coming from outside of a few players. Well, we've seen that pretty nicely so far this season in terms of how there's just no scoring depth. And Adam Gretz of Pittsburgh pointed this out. The Penguins have scored 3 goals in only 2 of their last 15 games, or three plus goals, something around there. That's unacceptable. And you're not going to win in the NHL if you're just scoring 1 to 2 goals a game. And Josh Yohe of The Athletic, he even took it a step further. The last time they scored more than 3 goals in a game was early January. Early January. I mean, that's just insane to me. You think of the Pittsburgh Penguins, you think of a team that can light teams up, 4-goal games, 5-goal games, 6 to 7-goal games, but they're not even getting 3 goals at this point. As Adam said, 3 goals in 2 of their last 15 games, more than 3 goals, not since in a month. And as for the power play, it has been a chore to watch that unit. They've had to separate Crosby and Malkin on the power play, which, I mean, they don't really usually do that too often. There's no shoot first mentality. It's a lot of Gino playing catch with Erik Karlsson at the point. The zone entries are putrid. Everything about that unit has been awful this season. And it's funny. If they had a functioning, even an average power play, they'd probably have, I would say, 9 to 10, 11 more points in the standings. Last night, their game against Winnipeg, this comes courtesy of the Penguins were Justin Guerriero, I think is how you pronounce his last name. They have 14 one-goal losses this season. And the power play in those 14 one-goal losses, 6 for 59. I just can't even believe I'm saying that, because you think of all that talent, the Hall of Famers on that unit, and they're still continuing to be this bad. It's unacceptable. And I just can't believe they haven't even at least made a change to the coaching staff. Todd Reardon is the one who runs that power play, and they're still trotting him out there on the coaching bench like he's not doing anything wrong, even though I think he should have been fired a few weeks ago. I just, the more the season goes by, I just don't fully know what the plan is at this point, considering they went all in over the offseason.
Question about this, Erik Karlsson, Chris Letang, are they kind of hindering each other a little bit because they're both such similar style players?
I wouldn't say so. I think both have been really good so far this season. I think Erik Karlsson, he'd have more points if the Penguins weren't the worst finishing team in the league. They are the 32nd team in terms of finishing. And this is not just a one-year thing. They have been a terrible finishing team for the last 2 seasons. I think it's some combination of A, not having finishers, because you look at the bottom 6 right now, it's absolute garbage. B, the system a little bit, even though they're usually a top 10 team in terms of expected goals. And I mean, that's really, I think, all there is. And also, I would say bad luck. I think bad luck is a little bit part of it. But, I mean, 32nd in finishing, man. He'd have more points this year if this team actually could finish at 5-on-5. But he's been as advertised. I would say I think the people that are harping on that trade, I don't fully think are watching this team on an every night basis. That's just how I see it. Letang has been fabulous. And sure, the offense may not be there as much as it has been recent years, but he's been great on the penalty kill. He's been great at 5-on-5, great in his own zone. He's kind of turned into maybe a little bit of a different defenseman this year in terms of how great he's been in his own zone, while the Penguins are letting Karlsson cook a little bit more in the offensive zone. Now, they have let Letang quarterback the top power play a little bit these last couple of weeks. It looks more natural when he's up there, but I don't think they've kind of hindered each other. I don't think this is like a Burns-Karlsson thing that you saw in San Jose. They feed off each other, and I think they've both been great together this season.
So what do you expect this team to do at the trade deadline?
It's a great question. I think I'm at this point now. I'll believe it when I see it, when it comes to them trading Jake Guentzel. I know people are saying, you don't want to lose him for nothing. You don't want to lose him for nothing. And I get it. I get that. But the return you're probably going to get is magic beans from Jack's Beanstalk Beans. That's what I've been saying on the show here. You're just going to get a prospect who's not going to project to probably be that good, a first-round pick, which is going to be in the 20s, and you don't even know if that player is ever going to sniff the NHL, and a roster player who's probably going to play in the bottom 6. I also think the factor of pissing Sidney Crosby off is very real. I don't think he would be happy if Jake got traded, considering how much he loves playing with him, how I think he's going to want him to resign after this season. I will believe it when I see it. Now, I think, and I'm of the opinion, if they are serious about winning this year, and they should be, you got Erik Karlsson over the offseason, you signed all of these players, you filled up your cap space basically in one day on July 1, but you need to go out there and make a move right now if you are serious about winning. If you don't, then you're obviously just not really caring where the season goes. And that's just a kind of a disservice to Sidney Crosby, who is putting together a Hart Trophy caliber season. It's a disservice to Jake Guentzel, and it's a disservice to Tristan Jarry, who is playing like one of the best goaltenders in hockey. He's 8th in goals saved above expected this season. He's making a lot of us eat crow for how good he's been this year. I've been wanting him to try and get his redemption in the playoffs because I think he deserves to show that he's changed after what happened against the Islanders in 2021. And he's been great. He was fantastic against Winnipeg on Saturday. It was one of the only reasons why the Penguins had a chance to tie that game late. But at the end of the day, Dubas needs to make a decision now. You either get some help now or up it to the deadline, or you kind of, I mean, if you want to sell, I mean, whatever. I personally wouldn't. But if you were serious about winning, you need to make a move ASAP, because you're not going to get many more kicks at the can with Sid, Chino, Letang, Erik Karlsson, and company. You're just not. So they got to figure this out really soon. A lot of fans are upset, and I would say rightfully so, about how patient Dubas is being, but it's time for him to maybe start working the phones a little bit and see what he can do to maybe give this team a jolt that it really needs for the rest of this month and into March. You look at their next 6 games, 5 of those 6 games are at home. You have some pretty winnable games in there. They're going to have to really bang points and win what's left of their games in hand to fully get back into the race here.
All right, Hunter, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow the Locked On Penguins podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, SiriusXM. I co-host the show with Patrick Dam. You can follow him on Twitter at Syndrome for Wet. And you can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies. And yeah, we'll see what this team can do down the stretch.
All right, Hunter, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Rep, thank you so much, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and a lot more. And it's not just the NBA. You could use your hockey knowledge on FanDuel. Check out the latest odds and props for your favorite teams and players. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.